Through comedy, I've actually really learned to be a little bit more giving as opposed to being more selfish, because I produce a lot of shows, like this GayAF comedy show that I've been doing for the past couple of years, showcasing queer comedians. It feels really good to give people a space where they can do that and have a space where the audience is going to appreciate and understand what you're doing, because that's what we're all looking for, is that connection when we're doing comedy. So yeah, it's funny how doing something that's so one person on stage, I feel less selfish than I did 15 years ago about what I'm doing. I'm actually just enjoying the ride now, which is a great thing to do as an artist.
Today on the Creative Imbalance podcast, we're joined with comedian, writer, producer. The man does it all. His name is Robert Watson. He's currently got some shows going on. If you're listening to this currently on August 24th and 28th in Toronto, Courtyard Comedy. And it coincides with his brand, GayAF, which is a platform he made for the LGBTQ community to do stand-up and flourish in their talents. And yeah, this is an awesome talk. This is the first time I really got to learn about that scene and everything. Also, we learn about his story, how comedy became such a part of his identity, and around all that, just have one of the most introspective looks into the art of stand-up. This was such a great talk. I love Robert's energy, and even after talking to him, it just made me want to work harder on my own stuff. Like I said, the man does it all. Performer, writer, producer, so much knowledge, and we're going to share that with you today. So, let's not waste any time, and let's get into this. Really nice to meet you, man.
Yeah, likewise.
Awesome. Yeah, I see you got the branding in the background. Perfect.
Oh, I did, yeah. Hey, I did. It's because of the online shows I had to do, right? You got to have that stuff in behind you.
Yeah. And also, I look at your resume. Obviously, the comedy is such a huge part of your life too. And you mentioned online shows, and I know it's been such a fucking crazy year for almost everybody who's in entertainment. How was the transition to maybe doing comedy from the stage to Zoom calls and everything like that?
It was an adjustment. I had just found out what Zoom was, and suddenly I was doing comedy on it, So It was, we're used to video calls. The idea of having an audience through Zoom was pretty interesting, just because, you don't have that same audience connection as you would in person. So it's doing comedy to avoid, or it's if you're doing comedy and you're bombing and no one's laughing, that's what every Zoom show feels like.
I can imagine. Even with doing my show, I used to do it in a studio, which is no longer there anymore because of COVID stuff and stopped running. But it's changed everything for me, and almost the opposite of a performer. It just kind of made things a little easier. I was so I don't know, strict about these episodes need to be in person, and now it's oh, this is just easier. I can set my alarm for we're doing this at 12. I can set it for 11:55, roll out of bed.
Okay, huh?
I don't have to travel across town, but I don't know. It's crazy how everything's changed. And
yeah, well, there definitely is that element of oh, it's easier. That a lot of comedians make jokes. Oh, I don't have to wear pants now while I do comedy.
Yeah.
But it's interesting watching. Stand up comedy has become sit down comedy in the era of Zoom. Mm-hmm. So, but I actually still personally like to set up my computer high up enough where I can stand and do my comedy to Zoom, because I still think that energy needs to be through the body. It's so much more relaxed just because you are sitting back, and then the entire routine can become relaxed. And if you're someone who likes to put some energy into your routines like I do, it makes it a little bit more difficult. Even if people aren't responding, you can see yourself on the Zoom, or you watch it back after, and you want to know you have that same energy that you would in a regular show. At least that's how I feel about it.
Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I never thought of it that way too. Yeah, that's true. You can stand up, be more animated, and at the end of the day, it is called stand-up comedy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So no, that's cool. Because I have seen some other comedians do their thing, and they were sitting down, and I just never thought of it that way. Where it's maybe the next time, now the world. Especially in Ontario, it's slowly opening. They're having people in venues, and maybe they kind of lose their, I don't know what's the word for it, that animated aspect of their performance from just sitting down for a year. And
It's like a version of having your sea legs, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't know how to stand and tell jokes anymore. I haven't done this in a year and a half.
Yeah. And obviously comedy is such a huge part of your life. Like
Yeah.
I look at your press releases from like performing to writing web series and different brands and everything. And I just kind of want to know, like, maybe like back in the day, do you have like an early memory of where you kind of got the itch to just kind of take humor and make it like such a big part of your life?
Well, definitely, like as a kid, like I found that I had like a little bit of a natural ability to make people laugh, and particularly like, you know, as a kid, wanting approval from adults. It's like, oh, I just made them laugh. Oh, I could keep doing stuff like this, and I guess that's like just an innate impetus within me to want to make people laugh and have a good time. But you know, definitely, you know, I was an 80s kid, so you know, that was the age of the syndicated sitcom where like every night at 7 p.m, you know, that your show is like Charles in Charge or you know, Three's Company or you know, Family Ties, Growing Pains, all those, you know, all those family sitcoms too. But you know, like then they, you know, they'd eke in the ones that were like a little bit inappropriate for kids, like Three's Company, not really appropriate for kids. But I was like, I was always watching that, and I was like, oh my goodness, what does that mean when all this sexual innuendo and of course that was my first experience of seeing someone who's supposed to be gay on screen in Three's Company, although you know that was all for shits and giggles, I guess, for the for making fun of it. But you know, like at the same time, it's like, oh, okay, there's, you know, the world is a bigger place than I knew, and that definitely sitcom TV expanded my knowledge in this idea of what is timing, what is it that makes people laugh, you know?
Yeah, that's really cool to hear. Actually, there's a really great documentary series running right now called The Sitcom, and they kind of talk about like experiences like you mentioned of like just the different eras. And like in the 80s it was like the first time they had like gay characters, and like late 70s early 80s it was black families. It's really like interesting, and it's been going on. And actually my buddy Pat, he produced it, and it's now on CNN like every week.
Oh my God, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's huge. Actually, I got to get him on the show. And if Pat, if you're listening, he's on the Patreon too, so I'm sure you're listening to this episode early. But big congratulations, and yeah, I'm gonna bug you for an episode. But back to Robert. Kind of just had to plug my buddy there for a second because it's on topic. But no, that's really cool to hear that that you got the itch through sitcoms. Like I was born in '85, and sitcoms were still rocking as I was growing up too, with like TCI for Fridays and all that, those different like I don't know. And it seems like things with like the sitcom kind of like it changed. Like the laugh track's gone. There's still like sitcoms now, but it's
really different now.
Yeah.
It's a lot more niche. Like they go for like, as opposed to like these broad strokes of comedy. Like you see more niche sitcoms. I mean, you see all the different things coming out of like HBO or Showtime or all those kind of shows that are definitely very like more niche towards a much more targeted audience, and with the hope of maybe finding an expanded audience. But really, what's great is that they're playing to their focus audience as well, which I think is actually a really great thing. Because I mean, me doing queer comedy, of course, my audience is very focused as well. You know, and of course, everyone's welcome to watch, everyone's welcome to enjoy, but I'm going to be unapologetically queer the entire time. So, you know, you got to be cool with that.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure that's a cool place for that kind of like demographic to just go to, and they're just like, yo, this is my people, you know. That's something special as well. Like that's really cool that you do that and everything.
Well, it's something outside, because of course, you know, gay culture, queer culture is just chock full of drag these days, you know, like from RuPaul's Drag Race to all these other shows that do things to emulate or you know, expand the world of drag. But I do think it's really interesting, you know, when you talk about queer comedy, you have to talk about drag, because drag queens are comedians. They're there to make you laugh. You know, back in the, you know, 70s and 80s, so Canada has the oldest working drag queen in the world.
Oh, really?
Yes, Michelle DeBerry, and they, oh, what am I trying to say? Well, okay, well, they're really the first queer comedians. because Michelle DeBerry had this group called the Great Imposters, and they would go around to little towns throughout Canada, and they would do their whole drag act, and it was totally a comedy act, and they were just like, everyone was like, they're coming to town. It was like a big deal. And it's so funny when we watch the progression of equality for queer people. That sort of queer cultures become a little bit more insular, so it doesn't share in the same way, which I found interesting. But like without people like the Great Imposters going out first, maybe there wouldn't be the same kind of queer comedy or people feeling confident in that. But I do think like there is room for people who aren't in drag who do comedy too, and that's sort of where I focus my efforts, because you don't have to put on a dress to be a gay funny guy.
Yeah, facts. Yeah, no matter what Kids in the Hall taught us, there's different ways to
exactly. Everyone's welcome, but like just remember, I don't have to do that for you to laugh at me.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And it's I respect that too. It's just like I find like sometimes things like pop off and become popular, and then people are like, okay, I need to follow this trend, and that'll be my way to make it. But like I find like the most special things are when people are just being themselves and like kind of like in their own lane, and like there's only like one you, and that's what makes you so special, and just if you can find your own thing and tap into that whatever way you can and do it that way.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. And it did take me a while to figure out where that sat really comfortably for me. Like I was doing theater for years. And what was great is starting out as a comedian a little bit later, I felt like I did have a bit of a head start because as a theater person, it's like, oh, I don't really feel like a comedian. Well, just act like you're one.
Okay.
Fake it till you feel it in a little bit of a way.
Yeah.
But it's coming into your own and being yourself on stage is actually, the idea for a lot of people, just public speaking in general, is just so terrifying. And then add on to that, it's like, so you're going to be on stage speaking to a room full of strangers and you have to make them laugh.
Yeah.
And be yourself. It's like you throw all those, and sometimes it's difficult to do, but sometimes you need to have that either personal growth to get there, or for a lot of other people in comedy, it's just have such a, how do I want to put this? Not like a shitty life, but like lots of like weird stuff happening in your life that you're like, I just got to talk about this,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And they say too, it's like I've talked to other comedians on here, and they say when like sometimes people want to be a comedian, they're like, okay, I'm gonna make jokes, and they sit down and write, and then they're just like got like this block in their head. They're like, oh, I can't do this shit. And then really it's like you get your jokes of just kind of being a character and not thinking about writing, just living life and like gaining that experience and everything. And
exactly.
Yeah, I even I watched a recent interview with the singer Lorde, and she's only on her third album or something, and it's been like she's been in the industry for almost like a decade now. People are like, why do you take time off? She's like, oh, I just gotta live and get stuff to write about, and then she's like, oh, sometimes it'll take 3 years, sometimes it'll take 5 years. And I thought that was just so awesome, like, because that's the truth. It's just like you can get so stressed about whatever your creative craft is, but sometimes you just got to take a breather. Maybe I'll go outside, maybe I'll go on an adventure. And when you're not thinking about writing or something, that's when I don't know, I feel like the magic happens in a way.
Yeah, and so true about like singer-songwriters too, that you're wondering like, hey, how come back in like the 50s 60s, it was like the pop stars and we're having like sometimes 2 albums a year, and it's like, well, that's because they're not writing any of it. But so you got a team of people. It's like, oh no, I have 20 people writing for me. It's like, oh, you have so much life experience. It's like, yeah, I have 20 people's worth of life experience because I didn't write it. But someone like Lorde especially, and plus, like, started when they were like, what? Like, I think their first album came out at 17. So
yeah, she was like 16, 17, and just a teenager then.
So it's like, yeah, get some life experience, because, otherwise you're still going to be talking. Although the thing she was talking about was very different from, any teen pop star at the time, So, I mean, well, good for her.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a fan. But
yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's cool. Like you mentioned, like a little bit of your theater background, and did you start performing from doing theater first, and did that transition to stand up, or was it like
it's so I was a theater kid growing up. That's where I found, like so many queer kids, they find sort of like their little area of acceptance in high school in the theater class, drama class, and the drama club. So I was there all the time doing that stuff. Wrote my first ongoing weekly soap opera that all the other students would be in, and I was like the writers. I was like the writers were, man. I was as an actor on stage, and it became like the sensation of the school. So that of course fed me even more. It's like, oh, this is great. I love getting this kind of attention.
That's so cool, actually.
Yeah. Oh, you know what?
Yeah.
And for some reason, like at my high school, everyone watched soap operas, like because they were just it was like the early 90s, and soap operas got really ridiculous in the early 90s. Like people were getting possessed by the devil,
Yeah.
like people getting kidnapped and put into some sort of trapped in some underground city, and that on top of all the like, oh, someone has amnesia, or like, oh, this person went away and now they're back, even though they're a completely different actor. We're just going to all accept that that's the same person. All that kind of fun stuff with soap operas. Because soap operas actually are hilarious. If you like, they are really funny because they're just taking themselves so seriously because that's how they're directed. It's actually great, a great study for like to find things to make fun of. But so I went through theater school here in Ontario, went to George Brown Theater School, and came out of that, and had to make a living outside of that too. So I was doing that, and that's was great to get life experience, just outside of being in some sort of school system. And comedy just that was coming naturally. I was writing plays that were funny, and then it was like, why don't you just be funny yourself? And it was interesting because I had a couple friends who were doing comedy, and I think I stopped myself from doing it because I was like, oh, that's my friend's thing. I don't want to look like I'm copying them, which was really dumb. I should have just been like, no, you know what? I'm going to do it better, lose the friendship, whatever.
Yeah. You got that fire in you. But sometimes like back in the day, especially like when you're like trying to like find yourself, and I don't know, I'm getting old and I still feel like I haven't found myself, but you know what I'm trying to say? It's like,
it's a journey, right?
Sometimes like you'll think of things like that and make little like roadblocks of things that maybe like in your heart you really want to do, but I can't do it for this reason or that reason and stuff like that. You're
right. You know what? Probably the underlying thing of all that, I said all that, oh, my friends were doing course, I was probably just scared to do it at the time. It's like, I'm going to make this excuse, but really. But yeah, so, and it's just, ended up being like, you know what, I really want to write for television as well. And a lot of television writers are stand-up comedians. And I was like, I said I wanted to do this at some point, and that's about 4 or 5 years ago now that I started doing stand-up in earnest. And haven't got that TV writing gig yet, but I'm working on it. But it's just really fun, and through comedy I've actually really learned to be a little bit more giving as opposed to being more selfish, because I produce a lot of shows, like this GayAF comedy show that I've been doing for the past couple of years, showcasing queer comedians. It feels really good to give people a space where they can do that and have a space where the audience is going to appreciate and understand what you're doing, because that's what we're all looking for, is that connection when we're doing comedy. So yeah, it's funny how doing something that's so one person on stage, I feel less selfish than I did 15 years ago about what I'm doing. I'm like, I'm actually just enjoying the ride now, which is a great thing to do as an artist. Just enjoy it.
Yeah, and it's cool. I think in the city of Toronto, which you're in Toronto too as well, right?
Yeah.
It's I find I notice kind of like the comedy scene, it is pretty friendly, and there's like the different cliques, like there's like the stoner clique, and then there's like like
Canada's gone.
There's like clean comics, and then there's like the dirty guys, and now today it's cool, like I'm kind of learning about like the gay community as well, like in that bubble as well. And I don't know, I've dabbled in like stand-up and like just doing little open mics, and
right on, that's great.
I remember I took a trip to LA, and I was there, and I realized it was like the same day they had like open mic at the Comedy Store. So I went to go check it out, and I put my name down, but there was a lineup of 100 people, like just lottery like type of thing. And I didn't get the lottery, and I was just the whole line left, and I'm still like kind of standing there. I'm like, oh, I'm going to watch the show. I'm here. Like, this is a legendary building. And like as the night going on, I realized like it was interesting because it didn't, like LA didn't have the communal feel like just from this one night I was there, like I
Mhm.
could be wrong. There could be different groups there, but just it didn't have that communal feel. It felt like everybody was just there for themselves. And like I mentioned, like people, like if they didn't get it, they leave. They're not gonna
Yeah.
watch the show, type of thing. It was like kind of like that energy, and almost like I listen to other comedy podcasts, and I hear all these stories of people like stepping on each other to get spots. And I don't
Oh yeah,
know
that sounds about
if
right.
it's because there's like less spots there, but it seems like pre-COVID, Toronto was just flourishing, like with different stages and venues and stuff. And it's like,
Yeah.
even as I dabbled into it, I never had a problem like finding a way to like get on stage and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's cool that actually you have an avenue too, which is like a different niche and for a different community and everything. And it's just that's gotta feel awesome, you know, and like seeing it grow and everything.
Yeah, I mean, it took a few years. We what really got queer comedy sort of up and running to the size that it is now. There have always been fantastic queer comedians up in Canada, and particularly in Toronto. I mean, I have a whole bunch of mentors that have helped me along the way and continue to help me. I mean, my Courtyard comedy show that's going on right now. We just had our first show yesterday, and our headliner was Elvira Kurt, who's like a Canadian comedy legend. You know, had her own show on Comedy Network for a while, and but like just all of these people who've gone before, who are willing to help out this younger generation of comics. You know, like, you know, Maggie Casella with We're Funny That Way really started up the idea of there being enough queer comedians for there to be a queer comedy scene, you know, and that's a yearly festival that was happening since 1997. So you know, queer comedies existed, but I feel like there's this you know, new generation of comedians that's coming up, and it was sort of established through this open mic at Pegasus bar on Church Street that was happening for a year and a bit, and you know, and that created, not only was there, you know, we're all gay and we all love stand-up comedy, so it created this lovely little community, and we're all still in touch with each other even through the pandemic, and you know, and figuring out how do we make something happen on Zoom, or you know, let's make sure, you know, we keep in touch so that when comedy comes back, we can, you know, still make these shows, because while it's a, you know, it's a bigger community, it's still a, you know, it's still a small pocket of the greater community. But really quite prolific, and all of these queer communities are doing really well now on you know, shows that would be considered like a straight show or whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear too, and especially like you guys having the drive, even though like COVID hit, and you guys are
Oh
still
yeah.
like communicating. It's like, okay, how can we bring this back, like not lose any momentum and everyone.
Yeah.
That's really cool to me, and I commend that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been and it has been a journey. I'm like doing something in front of a live audience. So it's an outdoor show. I mean, Courtyard comedy. It's going to
Yeah.
be in a courtyard, so it's outdoors. But you know, and so that just for those people who aren't quite ready to go indoors yet, because live comedy is back indoors. Comedy Bar in Toronto is open again, and I mean, what a fantastic bastion of support for independent comedy that Gary Rideout gives over at Comedy Bar, letting independent comedians like book and do their own shows there and everything like that. It's absolutely fantastic. One of the main reasons why there is a thriving Toronto comedy community, for sure. But it's been an interesting time to not have an audience and go back to having an audience.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
like yesterday was like, and I think even the audience, like I was like, this is a really warm audience. Like, well, they haven't done anything for a year and a half. They're just happy to be anywhere. Oh my God. And it
Yeah.
was raining yesterday and everything. And like, we were like, are we going to cancel the show? And we decided not to, because I was like, I'm not refunding money to anyone. No.
Yeah.
So we bought ponchos. Everyone showed up except for one person, and they just put on their poncho. They were like, "We are here to laugh, and we are so determined." And I was like, "Oh, I love this audience. I wish I could always have this kind of audience." But you can feel it if you go out in Toronto right now, because of the phases of reopening. Like, things are open, but they're not. So people are like desperate to find something to do, because there's no big events. You know, great that the Blue Jays are back, but
Yeah.
you know, other than that, there's nothing big happening in Toronto. So people are really looking for something to do to feel that connection again. It was such a great feeling yesterday to have
Yeah.
that show.
Yeah, that's so cool to hear about the experience of your show too. And I can imagine too, it's like even I've been antsy, like I'm gonna explode, like lots of like my my thing to do is like I live like right up the street from like the Opera House, and I'm a big fan of like rock and metal, and like almost to the point when I moved to this, I moved to this neighborhood, and like pre-COVID, I got used to seeing like so many shows, and sometimes like I just be walking down the street and not planning to go to a show, and I'm like, look at the sign, I'm like, oh, I fucking love that band, and just like
right on.
And now like I haven't done that in a year, and I didn't realize how big of like that's been a part of my life. And then I just seen like a thing on like a Facebook thing. It's like, oh, this show is coming in November, Opera House, and I'm like, oh, I gotta go. It's just like like gotta get my fix, like type of thing. And I'm sure like people are like that with comedy too. Even like I'm dying to see a show. I'm probably gonna come check out one of these Courtyard comedy shows, like because it's going on till the 28th, right? As well.
Yeah, it's every Saturday afternoon in August at Campbell House Museum. So if you're in Toronto, it's right at Osgood subway station, corner of Queen and University. So yeah, every Saturday at 3:00, we've got just some of the best comedians in Toronto. So the Courtyard Comedy Shows isn't 100% queer. There's a little bit of a mistake in the press where someone said, "Oh, these queer comedians," and then listed everyone.
Yeah, and, it's like that guy's straight as fuck.
Yeah, exactly. Well, one of my comedians got a phone call from a family member being like, "Are you gay? Why didn't you tell us? Like, we want to support you." You know, it's like the guy has a fiance. It's like he's just on the show. He's just on the show. He's just a cool guy on the show. You know, but
that wasn't his statement of like, this is me coming out, look at the flyer. It's just like vague little dramatic hints and stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna give my coming out experience over to this comedy producer and just let him out me to everyone. Yeah.
I kind of think that's awesome, but yeah, whatever. That's cool.
He just laughed about it. I mean, and that's my favorite kind of straight guy. It's like, hey, you're hanging out with gay people? Are you gay? It's like, no, I just hang out with gay people. What's your problem? You know, that's
yeah. Also, I think that's the beauty of Toronto too. It's like I've come from like a smaller town too, and
me too.
I swear, like growing up, there was the one gay guy, and like the town would all like whisper about him. There was also just like like two black families. Like it was interesting, like, and I never like growing up like felt like there was something wrong. I don't know if it was because of what I was watching on TV or whatever. Like I just accepted everybody and differences, and now being here, I feel like a minority being straight, not a vegan, and white. Like all my friends are just like all different like cultures and like everything. Like, you know, it's kind of a, I don't know. I think it's a wonderful experience living in Toronto and just everybody being so accepted and not like, I don't know. There's not that like layer of like gossipy, like of things that are different. If like somebody's just different, like you just kind of like hang with them and maybe ask them about, hey, what's up with like this community or like stuff like that, you know? And that's
it's impossible to not bump into multiculturalism in Toronto, which for me was great because I grew up in a small town. I grew up in a very religious family, so I was not necessarily trained to accept everyone, including myself and my own queerness. So moving to Toronto was a very refreshing thing. My first job was in North York as well at Yorkdale Mall. And Yorkdale Mall is where everyone goes, you know, like, so I, you know, and working with people of all sorts of different backgrounds. And I was like, Toronto is the place to be for, you know, I mean, you know, everywhere we have a long way to go for acceptance and equality, but Toronto's, you know, doing a better job than most cities, you know?
Yeah, for sure. There's still like, I don't know, it's not like perfect, but you know, it's just, I feel like, especially just in the circles I run in, it's just very like awesome, accepting all different kinds of people. And I don't know, I'm blessed from this experience from being in Toronto too. And just, I feel like just in life, you just learn a lot from hanging out with people who are not like you and like talking. And even like, I was excited to have you on the show today too, because I know nothing about the gay comedy community, and I'm reading your press release. You got the branding, the GayAF, and I'm like, let's let's get into this. That's wicked. And yeah, actually, when did you like start like the transition from being a performer to like kind of doing the brand and putting on the shows and everything?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. So, I mean, one other thing about being a theater artist is quite often you make your own work as well. So the transition from theater to producing comedy shows is actually pretty easy because I was producing plays in the Toronto Fringe, which is, if you ever want a crash course in producing something or an experience, do a Fringe show, because you have to do everything yourself. It's like, it's total indie. You're going out to the papers or the different blogs or and podcasts or just like, because you're trying to find however it is you're going to promote your show and get people get bums in those seats for the Fringe, because you're competing with 100 other shows in the Fringe. So I mean, that was a great training ground for me to be like, okay, you know what, producing a comedy show has its similarities to producing a Fringe show. Branding's important, name of your brand is important, name of the show, how are you going to make it appealing to people to want to come, how do you do that when they haven't even seen a show yet? So it's good to have bold branding, like having something called GayAF comedy, and the AF stands for whatever you want it to stand for, right?
Oh, okay, that's cool. Yeah, it's not just as fuck, like.
I mean, I have to say that so I can get put in the papers, right? So it's AF, what does that stand for? Well, you decide. I don't know. But
smart. That's smart too. Like, just kind of keep it PG maybe when it's not, and get that publicity in those different markets on the newspaper and stuff.
Yeah. It's like that gay, the sort of like gay innuendo that they would do on the Golden Girls sometimes when they're talking about something gay, right? It's like, we're gonna make it just past the censors.
Yeah. Just one toe in the water there.
Exactly. But yeah, like, so that kind of indie producing really lent itself for me then moving to comedy, because I had that mindset of how do you promote the heck out of a show, and quite honestly, comedy does require personal connection with people too. So it's not, going in the papers, trying to get in the paper or trying to get on a blog isn't the only thing you do. You got to connect with your audience. And one thing I always like to do is, I might be hosting my show, but I also like to, as much as possible, rip the tickets at the beginning of the show. Like, I want to say, welcome, hey, thanks for coming. And I think that one thing even does a lot to make an audience a lot warmer, because they're like, oh, we just met the guy, this is his show, like that personal connection. Even if it was like 100 people at a show, it's like that connection of saying, hi, thanks for coming. I'm really glad to see you there. And I think maybe because it's a queer show too, that like you're feeling the community's already there. But it's really important to comedy's all about connection, because if your audience isn't connecting with you, they're not going to laugh either. So I can make them already feel like they're here they're like, oh, I like the host, we're going to have a good time.
It just,
you're already
kind of like opens them up, and just like, they feel at home. And when you're relaxed, that's when the laughter comes out, and everything. That's really cool to hear, especially like meeting everybody at the door. That's I think that's just awesome, and just such a nice, friendly thing to do too. And
not everyone does it. I mean, if I were like a famous comedian, probably shouldn't do that. Like, I got to a level where it's like, hi everyone, thanks for, oh my god, autograph. Like, no one's ever gonna get it. So I'm just riding that wave of just being anonymous enough where they're like, oh, that's a very nice man that just spoke to us. It's like, great.
No, that's wicked. I love always like hearing about like behind the scenes production and stuff like that. And one thing I noticed, most people listen to this on Spotify, but they're not going to see. You got the Kermit the Frog there behind you.
Oh yeah, I've got Kermit and also that Statler and Waldorf behind me there as well.
Just heckling him on the show.
Yes. I should have Fozzie somewhere around there for them to heckle. But the Muppet Show was another show that was just a huge inspiration for me growing up, because I was like, they did the weirdest stuff on the Muppet Show. Right? And so it's like, so that's humor too. Like, honestly, if you look at watching the Muppet Show, like you can see the inspirations from even things like Monty Python and stuff, because it's just so absurd. But putting that in the context of like, okay, we're gonna make a family show, but we're gonna try to make it as weird as possible. Like Gonzo the Great.
It's like, what the
so strange. Chickens, pigs in space. What's going on here?
And I love how like they'd have like all their sketches, but then it would like cut like behind the scenes, them trying to build the show and stuff. And I don't know, like I'm starting to like think now too. It's like I've always just loved like behind the scenes of production and like have done like different productions myself too. And I'm starting to think, I'm like, was the Muppet Show like the early seed of like wanting to be around like that excitement too? Like,
No
you
kidding.
see, like, I don't know, like I always loved like, that's like one of my earliest memories of watching something on TV is the Muppets. So I don't know if that's like unconsciously just kind of went in my head of like, this is something I want to be a part of, like this madness. But
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I've been rewatching it because they put it on streaming, and I'm like, I sort of am Kermit. Like I am doing, like I'm trying to do all this stuff, and I'm trying to host a show, and I'm trying to do. It's like, yeah, I really identify with Kermit these days because he's trying to do it all, and he's got a whole bunch of people like, hey, like chirping at him every which way. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's sometimes how it feels.
That's awesome you said that too, because when I brought up Kermit, that's originally where I was going to go, and I went off in a different train of thought. But yeah, like your whole life, from not only doing all the stuff backstage, like Kermit goes out, performs everything, it's just very coinciding. And
well, there is that feeling too, like with the rain yesterday, for example, like really stressful day of like, am I going to have to, because if it rained a certain amount, of course I was going to have to cancel. So like there's all this pressure. Are people going to show up? Oh, great, the people who are doing like the alcohol tastings from our Cottage Springs sponsorship are here, like, and they're like, and we have to get set up now. It's like, okay, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and then it's like, and you're the first person on as well, as the host. It's like, that's like, I feel like, yeah, I'm Kermit the Frog when it comes to that. And you just have to be like, whoop, just like Kermit does, because he goes on stage and he's suddenly like, hey, and I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what you have to do, no matter what's been happening behind the scenes.
Even if there's a fire behind you, you just like,
oh my gosh,
gotta snap out of it. And that shows like you're a true professional too. That's one thing I always fascinated me about like great performers as well. As like it's crazy how like just life in general, like things just happen that aren't in your hands. You can have a bad day and stuff like that, but then when it's showtime, you almost got to like flip a switch in a way and be like, I'm going to deal with this later after my set or whatever, where I don't know. I feel like with the few times I have dabbled in stand-up too, there's one where I had like a really bad day and I bombed so hard because I was like so much in my head. It was like I was more in my head than like in the moment of the performance. And I don't know, just thinking about that always like fascinates me, like because I see people who are so consistent and on all the time. And like, for just like a random example, you think of like late night television, it's like 5 days a week you see whether like Fallon go out there over and over and over and over. No, it's kidding. Like he's got to have some like shitty days, like someday, like that's just part of the human experience. But just to flip that switch and be able to do your job in that moment, that's like I don't know, I admire that so much, just because it's hard.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's interesting you should say Jimmy Fallon too, because I mean, he probably doesn't want it out in the press, but he's got some troubles in life, like he's had, so the fact that he is doing that 4 or 5 nights a week is pretty amazing. But it is sort of like you compartmentalize it, and you can still do it. I mean, if you're doing it that often, it does become a switch that just goes click, and you're on. And you look at a lot of super famous comedians who have like some serious like personal demons, and we don't necessarily know about it. Like Robin Williams being a perfect example of someone who brought joy to so many people. But he had he was very troubled, and ultimately so troubled that he took his own life. So it's interesting, that dichotomy from personal life to what's on the stage. And there's a stereotype of it that like that comedians are damaged people, and that's what makes them able to make these comments on the world. And I agree with that to a degree, but I would hope that every comedian doesn't need to dwell on their demons in order to be a successful comedian. That's certainly, I'm despite the pandemic, in a happier spot than I was 10 years ago in regards to my art. So and personal life, but it's like, that doesn't mean I can't be funny anymore. I hope, it's like those people like, oh, I can't write an album anymore because, I'm in a happy relationship, I'm writing the baby album there's some of those, the women, artists that are like, oh, this is my baby album because I just had a baby. It's like, hey, that's great. You don't need to be writing about, the people that dumped you all the time.
Yeah. And that's a very like true thing that goes in the head of different artists and performers. I'm kind of like, through my videography life, I'm connected to the battle rap scene as well too. And like,
oh wow, that's
some
great.
of the guys on like the bigger level too, like they've made a joke. It's like, oh, I'm getting married, I'm happy in life. Am I going to be able to be like angry now? Like,
no kidding.
And like fucking cut people like, this is like the things you think of. And like, even I think a comedian told me too, it's just like, oh, I got this new job and all my materials about being fucking broke. And this is like almost having a panic. Am I going to be still funny now that I'm like happy? Like it's like, I don't know. It's sad, but also like something you start thinking about if you've been using I don't know, whatever your writing outlet is to like kind of channel and turn like those negatives into like a positive. And I don't know, it's just like, you just got to change and evolve. Like, I feel like if you're funny, you can find different ways to be funny with different situations in your life. It doesn't always have to be through pain in a way, but yeah, I guess it happens too when you're all about one thing and then your life changes and you're like, oh fuck, like now what am I gonna do? Like, do I just lie about being broke on stage?
Yeah. No, but it's so interesting that you say that, just talking about this idea of, because some comedians can't be funny unless there's something to be unhappy about in life. Like a lot of comedy is complaining about life, and that's something that is universal. Like, a lot of the time life sucks, so let's talk about it and laugh about it. And in order to, I wouldn't say, I don't really know anyone who actually purposely goes after searching out trauma in their life, but there are, just as there are personalities and just in general in the world, people that just sort of attract either unfortunate or weird situations in their life, and that becomes their material. And so for some people, they absolutely, like, things are going well now, I don't have anything to say right now, and that's fine. That's the type of comedian you are. I find things from just out of life or what I'm watching. I love talking about pop culture a little bit from a queer point of view. There's always lots to say from a queer point of view about the world, because there's the whole world to talk about from a queer point of view. And that's the same for any comedian from any background can be like, I'm gonna give my point of view on this, and that's what makes me unique, and that's hopefully what also will make me funny.
Yeah, facts. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and hearing you talk, I'm excited to see you do a set soon. That's really cool. Yeah.
Well, I'm lucky enough there that I've been chosen and asked to do a half-hour stand-up special for Out for Laughs for Out TV. So Out TV is cool. the gay streaming service in Canada, and Out for Laughs is producing a whole bunch of newer comedians that are doing really well on the comedy scene and as queer comedians, and I'm really happy to be a part of it. It's actually filming on the 20th of August.
Oh, congratulations. That's awesome. Yeah. And is it going to be like in front of like a live audience in the city, or is it going to be somewhere else, or like?
Yes, a reduced audience. It's happening at the Medley up on Eglinton. It was run primarily as a dinner theater pre-pandemic, but they've been expanding what they're doing. And it's just a bunch of great comedians are involved with it. Trying to win tours on the same night that I'm doing mine. She's a fantastic comedian out of Montreal. There's just a bunch of great comedians. Vong Show, who's really well known for his Rice Asian Comedian Showcase that he does. He's also one of the people doing a half hour for them. And it's just great to see, because it's actually this Out for Laughs section is the most diverse group of queer comedians that they've had on. It's going to probably be the best group that they've produced yet. So I'm really happy to be a part of it.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Congrats, man. That's amazing, man. You're killing it, man.
I'm trying to. I sell a good game. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. It also seems like you're just motivated to always keep busy and keeping different coals and different fires and just keep working too. And I respect that as well. And yeah.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah.
There's a different, I don't know if it's the pandemic a little bit too, but it's like really realizing, having it missing, how much joy it brings, as opposed to that feeling of like, I need to get ahead, I need to make sure I'm doing well, or being competitive with others, you know, trying to get, and I think just enjoying the ride and trying to, you know, make opportunities if they're not there, and and just do a good job of it, do your best. That's sort of where my mindset is at these days.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, my mind is like in a similar place. Even though I'm doing a lot of different things, it's cool to talk to somebody like you and have that kind of energy. And one thing I love about putting these episodes out too, I find a lot of people gravitate to this show who are creators themselves and are working in the industry, whether it's like music, film and stuff. And even I could have somebody doing something totally different to them. I always like, almost every episode I get a couple messages like, yo, I really needed to hear that, or that just kind of gave me this certain inspiring energy. And like I got a good feeling about this one, Robert. Like,
oh, that's great.
Talking to you makes me just want to start working on shit right now. So that's awesome.
Great. Do it, man. Like, I mean, it's interesting because there is a block of like for me, every morning has been like, oh, there's stuff I want to get done, but I just don't want to do it. You know, and it's just like, just get started. And my best tip I can be like, look, if you're having trouble getting started, just bring your phone or computer to your bed and just start doing it there. You're in bed, but you're still doing something at least. And that's been a real help to me, actually. It's just like, look, you don't want to get out of bed. You're bringing work to bed.
Yeah. I've did like a new thing where like, before I go to bed, I'll write a bunch of like notes, like little points, like, for example, yesterday it was email Robert back, and there's few things like that. And it's just like, I do video editing as well. So it's like, I'll put a couple things of what I have to do. And my thing is like my routine of where I slip and get into the bad like habits and stuff is like, I bought this new computer for editing. And it's so good. Like I just downloaded like a bunch of video games on it, and like I've been getting like lost in gaming again.
Dangerous. That's so dangerous.
So bad. So like before like I sit on the computer and get tempted to go down like the fucking dark rabbit holes and stuff, I just see all these things, and it's like, okay, I need to do this whole checklist before I turn on a game or like do something else. And like sometimes like, I don't know, I just need something like right in front of my face, because I don't know, I get so bad with just like temptations. And I'm also like an extremist where it's like, once I get into something, I become like obsessive about it. Like, and like the past month it was gaming, which is not a productive thing to get obsessed
and
about.
RPGs are the worst, because you're like, I just want to get to this one point, you know, like I want to beat this, but then it's like, okay, but now the story's interesting again. I'm going to follow this for a little. Like, it is like RPGs are the worst for that, because you just like it's because it's a story, and if you're someone who enjoys story and you're a part of it, it's just, you know, it's like Choose Your Own Adventure from when we were kids. Those little books where you're like, okay, now let's see what happens if I make this choice. What happens if I make this choice? You know, and it's totally addictive.
Yeah, it's so bad. And like prior to this new gaming addiction, like I take time off, but last year at the beginning of the pandemic too, I had I ended up getting a Nintendo Switch and playing Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Oh man,
yeah. Like I'm not like a big like advocate for like drugs or whatever. Somebody gave me some shrooms. I had a day where I just locked the door. Like, people listening to this is gonna sound awesome, but do at your own risk. Be safe and everything. But yeah, so I was so immersed in like, days are going by, but almost like you said with the RPG experience, it's just like, oh, I'm just gonna go here and then I'm gonna
stay at the inn.
And what's fucked up about that game is like you see a point in the distance of the field, and on your way walking to it, it turns into 4 like side quests of like things.
Yeah, there you go.
And then you get like OCD. I'm like, I gotta do everything, but
beware of the side quest.
Yeah. Games are bad. I'm gonna need to take another break and just.
I had to remove a few games from, you know, like because on you store them on the thing and you can archive them. I was like, I need to archive these because they you know, you turn it on to for whatever reason. It's like I'm just gonna play I don't know, Texas Hold'em for like 5 minutes as a break. But then there it is. There's that like RPG, like just like telling you, it's like, well, you know, if you've got to spare 3 or 4 hours, you should come over here. Like remove game from my selection.
Oh yeah. Sometimes you got to do that. Sometimes you got to be self-aware of the rabbit holes you go down. But also, it's cool to, at the same time, take that reset to go in full circle. What we're talking about too. It's like you can't always be working. Sometimes you got to take your mind in different places and get inspiration from different things. And there's
and just also like time for your brain to not have to work or think about it. Like there's something about concentrating on something that really in general has no consequence. And I know I see my condo unit is right by the elevator, and I am sure people going to the elevators on my floor heard me say the most awful words because I'm yelling at the video game, you know, like words that I would never, like things I would never say on stage. And they're like, and it's like, and you know, people at the other like, oh my goodness, what's happening in there? It's like, oh, he's just playing. I'm sure at this point they're like, oh, he's playing video games again. You know?
Yeah. It just brings out like a certain thing. I think that happens to like a lot of people too. It's like, especially like pre-pandemic, I guess like Call of Duty Warzone came out.
Oh my god!
And I never like jumped into like Call of Duty games, but I learned like they're the most toxic community.
The online communities are pretty bad.
and I started playing it because like my friends were on it, but it's so funny. It's like when you kill somebody, there's a little like 5-second window where you can hear the person you killed. And I've been called like some of the worst things ever, especially as I was getting better at the game. I was getting more and more slander,
more abuse. Oh man,
I kind of enjoy that type of chaos too at the same time. And I don't know, I guess that's why I love comedy as well, and like having like different comedians on the show and stuff, because I don't know, it's something beautiful about comedy is there is no rules. Like people can say we'll cancel you if you say this and that, but really as a performer you have this blank template and it's like, this is my 5 to 20 minutes or whatever, like, and I can right now say whatever I choose to, like, you know, there's something like just beautiful about I don't know what can happen, whether it's like chaos or just like how people choose their time. There's just something like, I don't even know if I can articulate like how much I appreciate like just it as like an art form, you know, of
indeed.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you should say that, because there is a lot more consequence in comedy now as well, you know, with the internet and social media. I mean, I remember the first time a video of a comedian went on and it was a scandal. I don't even remember the Michael Richards scandal, the guy from Seinfeld. Yeah. He got caught on tape and he went sort of ballistic on a patron and started being actually pretty racist. Yeah. And, you know, it's like, and of course he paid the price for that. So there's consequence in comedy a lot more now than there used to be. That the space of being on stage isn't like a sacred space of like, this is, you know, what happens in this room is about this room right now. Things travel outside that room and people have to be a bit more thoughtful about maybe what they're talking about, especially if they're building a routine. And this is what we see with comedians a lot too. Like we saw with Tracy Morgan, had a few like sort of homophobic things that he said in a routine.
Yeah, he said he was going to stab his son or something like that.
Yeah, not a great thing to say.
Yeah.
But he was practicing, and you know, when you're practicing something, as a comedian, you're working on your routine, because that's exactly what he was doing. He was working on his routine, and you know, something that comes out off the top of your head. You know, it's like, Oh yeah, I probably shouldn't have said that. But when you're in the moment as a comedian, sometimes that happens, right?
Yeah.
And there was some consequences for him. But he said, it really started that conversation of what is that space where a comedian can work out what they're doing. But also there's a lot of more social considerations these days. When you have someone like Eddie Murphy coming out and apologizing decades later for some of the stuff that he said and saying, that's not reflective of who I am now. A lot of jokes don't age well, though. And I think judging people on their past material from years ago probably isn't the best for our culture in general, because everyone gets canceled then.
Yeah, that's true. And even like I find sometimes like people will get in trouble and they say something that maybe they don't even believe in.
Yeah.
And that's almost like what they think the joke is. It's like, it's so ridiculous, like, and I don't believe in this, and that's the joke. So I'm just gonna go like way too far, and then something like happens like with like a Tracy Morgan situation. It's like, oh, I should have done that, and it's, I don't know, it's such like a slippery slope.
Yeah.
It's also something, I don't know, I find exciting about the art form. There's like a kind of like danger to it in a way, and it's yeah.
I mean, the danger in comedy, like that some comedians are known for that danger, right? Mm-hmm. So it is a kind of that's what you go for. You go for the danger, and that's fine as well. What I would say is for any audience members, like maybe. For some of the heavy hitters, it's easy to know what their comedy is, but sometimes people are going into a show where they don't really know everything that they're going to get. Mm-hmm. And someone, one of those comedians might offend you a little bit. And I've certainly sat in an audience where I'm like, yeah, I didn't really like that person, but I'm not going to go out and cancel them. Mm-hmm. If anything, if you really want to let a comedian know how you feel, let them know privately. I would say just send them a message. And I've definitely had comedians, had audience members come up to me and be like, hey, I didn't like that joke and here's why. And I always listen. Because it's like, I'd like to know why. I'm fascinated. Yeah. I'm not someone who usually does humor that's on that kind of edge where people would get offended, but I have had one or two times, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to hear you out, and I make a decision later whether that was their personal problem or whether it's like, oh no, they had a good point, but I always listen to the feedback and go just like from my theater days, getting a note, just thank you very much.
Yeah, this is professional, but no, that's really cool. And it's almost like what was I gonna say? It's I just lost my train of thought. I'm gonna cut this out. That's the beauty of doing your own show. There you go, right? I just had the biggest brain fart right there, but
it's Sunday. It's a Sunday, right?
Yeah, I got my morning coffee going. On Sunday. Yeah.
Oh yeah, this looks like I'm just drinking orange pop, but it's really like this is an energy drink. So.
Oh, okay, cool. But
so I don't drink coffee. That's one of. So I grew up Mormon, so they have a whole bunch of things that you're not allowed to do, and one of them is drink coffee. And
really?
And then people are like, "Wow, you're gay and Mormon?" I'm like, "No, you can't be that at the same time." But
I had to choose.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But one of the things, I don't drink coffee. I can't drink it. It's not for me. But I do everything else. But for some reason, coffee was on the like, no, I don't like it. So whenever to get my caffeine fix, it's always like a Red Bull or a Monster drink or something like that to just give me the jolt I need. I think a lot of comedians do that too. Probably, by the way, they get their jolt of caffeine before they go on stage.
Yeah, and it's like I find like. I don't even know why I drink coffee. Like coffee doesn't taste great, it's not.
I don't think so.
There's just something about like, I don't know, just having like a hot drink and then the energy you get off of it. It's like almost like a high. Like I'm sure like cigarette smokers are like this too when they get like the nicotine too. Like what you're doing, it doesn't taste good at all, but it just becomes like a part of your life, and almost to the point where like I have to have a coffee every morning, and I'm like, why am I like this? Like, what the fuck? Like,
and in the summer too, like it's already like, and in the summer too, it's already 25 to 30 degrees out there. And you're like, I'm gonna have a hot drink. I was like, you people are nuts that like coffee,
Yeah, it's insanity. It just shows like how like human nature, you can just adapt to like these habitual like patterns, and it just becomes so a part of you, and like almost to the point where you're not thinking about it. Like right now, I just kind of got me thinking about it. It's like, why do I have a coffee on a hot summer day every fucking morning? Like it's just like part of who you are, and like just in life too, like kind of like to go full circle with the conversation too, just kind of growing up in like a smaller town, and I would kind of mention like where a lot of people had like certain ignorance and stuff, and it's almost like becomes like just a part of the culture of the people you surround yourself around and everything. And I don't know, I feel like I'm not I'm not gonna say what I was gonna say. I was just gonna piss off a lot of people in my hometown who are good people. There's
and mine too. My hometown as well. You know, I'm talking about my experience in my hometown when I was a kid, which is, you know, I'm sure all the people in little Sydney, BC, right by Victoria, won't mind the fact that I was like, there were some issues. There probably still are. The small towns are just interesting places, but you know, makes for great source material when you're older.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, now as a writer performer, you're probably like, oh, all these past moments of uncomfort and like all these things. It's like, yo, I can just use it now, and it's almost like I always find that like such like a beautiful like poetic thing, as like whether you're like a stand-up or a writer or a song maker too, you can take almost like negatives and turn it into a positive and make money from it, and it's just like the ultimate I don't know, just defense against that, and fuck you, and like it's
no
like,
kidding,
like it's amazing.
It's like, hey, trauma that was caused, I'm gonna turn this around and I'm gonna make money off of you.
You know? Just turn it into like gold. And it's tragic, you have to have some of that to have those moments, but I don't know, that's human experience, you know, ups and downs, all that stuff.
I mean, you don't need to have those kind of experience to be a comedian, but it helps.
But Robert, I'm not going to take too much more of your time, even though I could talk to you all day. This is really fun, and I'm definitely going to check you out. Like we mentioned, Courtyard Comedy. From August 7th to the 28th. Right now, I think it's like the 8th.
Today is the 8th. So our next one is coming up on the 14th with headliner Martha Chavez, who's an amazing Nicaraguan Canadian LGBTQ comedian. And just great lineups all through the rest of August as well. You can check that out by going to Linktree/Courtyard Comedy, and it'll have connections to all the dates there.
Amazing. And I'm going to get this episode out as fast as possible. I recorded a couple more. I'm going to give this one the bump since you got this festival going on, and
you're the best.
I'm going to make it out to one of them. And once again, Robert, thanks for your time, and so nice to meet you, man.
Yeah, likewise. You have a great it's easy to have fun and have great energy when the person interviewing you has great energy. So thank you, Sean.
Hope you guys enjoyed these episodes, and like I said, you can check out Robert's shows on August 24th and the 28th, Courtyard Comedy, and follow him on social media for everything else. The guy, like, he does it all. We said it before, we'll say it again. Comedian, writer, producer. A lot of stuff going on with him and his brand GayAF. And before we go, like always, we got to give a special thanks to all you legends on the Patreon. First up, the co-producer Jeremy Hopkin of Hopkin Design, Ola Mizuka of Sonic Fold, Ryan Watkins of Ryan Radio, Amanda McKnight of Top 10 Nerd, Pat Maloney, Ryan Campbell, Daniel Sun, Drew Stewart, Devin Staple, Mike Ulio, David Kearney, Jared, Mr. Spicy Bronstein. What up, Pepper? Thanks for joining the Patreon. And last but not least, Francis Coffer, aka my mom. Can't thank you guys enough. Every little bit helps. And if anybody else wants to help out the show and get a shout out and get content earlier and all of that, you can check us out at patreon.com/thecreativeinbalance. And that's all for now. We got another episode coming for you real soon in a couple days, and we'll catch you then. Cheer!